Is the focus of the original film love? Yes. And does a boy that she meets only once decide to kiss her while she's unconscious? Also yes. Hi there, my name is Tessa, and I am begging Disney to stop making live-action remakes because at this point, it's just getting sad. Way back in 1937, Disney released the first full-length animated film, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and now, 90 years later, they're revisiting it in a live-action format. This marks the company's 20th live-action remake, sequel, or spin-off since 2010. And yes, I had to do a double take when I saw that number because what the hell? These live-action remakes have been received about as well as all of Disney's work in general lately, which is to say, poorly. But Snow White has been on the receiving end of more criticism than most. Besides the usual resistance from the public to the live-action format, the backlash towards Snow White is largely because of its cast, namely 23-year-old Rachel Zegler, who's playing Snow White, and 39-year-old Gal Gadot, who is the evil queen. Zegler's casting was announced in 2022, and people were not happy about it. And similar to Halle Bailey after she got cast as Ariel in The Little Mermaid, Zegler was hit with a barrage of racist comments because of her Latin heritage, one of the most popular being Snow Brown. The fuck? But honestly, Disney is kind of known for abandoning their actors the second the fandom starts acting up. Disney itself has been hit with a wave of "they're too woke" criticisms in recent years, which I think is hilarious because Disney's performative activism has barely done the bare minimum. In fact, we've actually taken a step backwards in regard to inclusivity. Case in point, the blind casting in 1997 Cinderella, an Asian Snow White in The Fairest of Them All in 2001, and a black fairy godmother in Ella Enchanted in 2004. That was 2 decades ago, and people weren't crying about how woke everything was, now were they? The alt-right crowd is a pretty simple-minded bunch, so they've been keeping tabs on everything that Rachel Zegler has been doing for the last 3 years. It's giving obsessed, and anytime she says something that they remotely disagree with, they send out their loudest dude bros to rile everyone up and start a new hate campaign. Of course, she's allowed to be called every name under the sun, but they're off limits. As evidenced by the recent election, when Rachel Zegler that she hoped that Donald Trump and all of his supporters never found peace. And I think she's onto something. Now, mind you, they were not very happy about this comment, like they nearly soiled themselves out of anger, because I mean, they're such snowflakes, right? And thousands of Trumpies swore that they would never watch the Snow White movie because Rachel Zegler was involved, which I found hilarious because let's be real, these people were never going to watch Snow White to begin with. Now, because I've talked about Snow White so many times over on my main Modern Girls channel, I already know that some people are getting ready to comment,
"Well, I'm not racist, I just don't like Rachel Zegler because she's ungrateful and entitled."
But let's hold our horses for a minute and really unpack that, because I think some of you might have been sipping a little too much haterade.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
People often point to a series of interviews that Rachel Zegler did when the movie was first announced as evidence of this entitlement, but how many of you actually paid attention to what she said? I'd guess not a lot, because she was right. Is the focus of the original film love? Yes. And does a boy that she meets only once decide to kiss her while she's unconscious? Also yes. I don't think it's completely out of left field for that plot point to be criticized. In fact, there are thousands of articles and think pieces dedicated to the very idea that Disney's films are regressive. Obviously, Sleeping Curses and True Love's Kiss are a staple of the fairy tale genre, and don't get me wrong, I love it when it's done right, but you have to remember that these works are literally hundreds of years old. The cultural norms from that time period are very different from what's normal today, and there's nothing disrespectful about acknowledging that. Hell, even Walt Disney himself wanted to expand upon the love story between Snow White and the prince, but animation just wasn't at the level that he needed it to be. So before you start screaming about Walt's legacy, understand that he would have changed the movie himself if he could have, which is also why this intended storyline wound up being reused years later for Sleeping Beauty. I know that people are inherently sensitive about the things that they love, but come on. One of my favorite movies is unironically James Cameron's Avatar, but I'm not going to tell every single person who disagrees with me to go fuck themselves, because not only would that be ridiculous, but it goes against everything film stands for. There is literally no such thing as a universally beloved film or a perfect film, and you can point out that something is dated in regard to its message or story while still having a love and appreciation and respect for it. And I'd argue that Rachel Zegler does have that, as she said many times since she's been cast. I also think it's important to mention that Rachel Zegler is not the only person who has worked for Disney who has criticized Disney. Remember when Robin Williams had a very public falling out with the mouse? Or when Tim Burton vowed to never work with them again because they kept meddling with Dumbo? Or when the entire cast and crew of the live-action Aladdin said that Jasmine's outfits in the original film were inappropriate, so they made a point of addressing it in their film? Are all of those people ungrateful too? Also, I don't know why everyone is focused on Rachel Zegler specifically for these comments, because Gal Gadot said the exact same thing. Because keep in mind, neither of them wrote the script. Disney had already decided on the direction of the film long before they had signed on.
Also, the fact that she's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's the proactive one, and she's the one who set the terms, is what makes it so relevant to where we are today.
And honestly, considering the lack of romantic relationships in Disney's films in general nowadays, this refusal to focus on love is just a pattern, and I wouldn't be surprised if they had specifically told their actors to promote that fact. Rachel Zegler's other comment that seemed to offend people was directed at her co-star Andrew Burnap, who plays Jonathan, the new love interest in the movie.
Whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
Some people felt like she'd thrown Burnap under the bus and was asking for his scenes to be cut out of the film, but people really need to get a sense of humor because she was so obviously joking. I don't even understand how people don't realize that. But do keep in mind that Cassie Steele was originally announced as the voice for Raya in Raya and the Last Dragon before being replaced midway through by Kelly Marie Tran because the film's direction had changed. Leslie Grace filmed an entire movie as Batgirl, but movie executives decided it was better to use the project as a tax write-off. Ellen Pompeo had a supporting role in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, but they completely erased her existence in post. So was Rachel Zegler wrong? No, it is Hollywood. I also remember people calling her greedy for participating in the 2023 SAG-AFTRA strike, which really goes to show that people don't understand how strikes work and don't understand the acting industry.
If I'm going to stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
Rachel Zegler has had some incredible opportunities in the 4 years that she's been in the business, but it doesn't change the fact that she's still considered an up-and-coming actress, so she isn't getting the kind of pay that Margot Robbie or Leonardo DiCaprio are getting. And yes, if you Google,
How much did Rachel Zegler make for Snow White?
it gives an absolutely absurd number in the millions, but of course, it doesn't actually cite its sources, because obviously there are none. Let's just use our critical thinking skills for a moment. If people estimate that Jennifer Lawrence made only $500,000 for the first Hunger Games movie, which she got right after her Oscar nomination, in what world is Disney, a company that is renowned for underpaying its employees, going to pay Rachel Zegler more than that? Now, I'm not saying that she didn't make a good amount of money for this role, but that's the name of the acting game. And you have to remember that there are probably dozens of people who are on her payroll. No matter how big the pie, you're gonna notice if some slices have been taken out of it. Besides, regardless of what she made, if she did the work, does she not deserve to get paid for said work? Like, I really don't feel like that should be controversial. Now, if you want to say,
All of that doesn't matter. I just think that Rachel Zegler shouldn't have been Snow White because she's annoying.
that's fair, but at least own up to that and don't try to dress it up as something else. On the flip side, Gal Gadot, Miss Imagine herself, has also received criticism from the public, although it's on the opposite end of the political spectrum as Rachel Zegler's critics. For those unaware, Gal Gadot is Israeli and a staunch supporter of the IDF, which has drawn considerable criticism because of the ongoing conflict in Gaza. And some people have said that they're not going to watch the Snow White movie as a protest of her involvement. This has probably also caused tensions behind the scenes, as Rachel Zegler is pro-Palestine. So yeah, I think it's safe to assume that they're not really getting along right now. I mean, they barely even looked at each other when they were presenting at the Oscars. But maybe that works for the movie, because it's Snow White and the Evil Queen. Some other drama that isn't related to the main cast are the Seven Dwarfs. When the movie was first announced, actor Peter Dinklage publicly expressed his disapproval of the entire fairy tale, which resulted in Disney making a statement that they were going to avoid reinforcing stereotypes about the dwarfism community. However, after footage from the set was leaked, rumors started to spread that Disney was going to be replacing the dwarf characters, which sparked even more backlash because now they were erasing roles. But now that we have a little bit more information about the film, I'm pretty sure that those characters in those leaked photos are just Jonathan's bandit friends. When Disney released the teaser trailer for Snow White, we were officially introduced to their reimagined dwarves, who were horribly uncanny valley monstrosities loosely inspired by their cartoon counterparts. These characters are voiced by several actors, but out of all of them, only one has dwarfism. Is that more or less inclusive? You tell me. Because of all of this discourse, I fully expected Disney to go crazy when it came to the marketing in order to try to rebuild the hype. But with Snow White's release being a little over a week away, I think they've given up. Rachel Zegler's press tour began in Japan, while Gal Gadot remained stateside to do the usual rounds at talk shows. Instead of the huge UK premiere that was originally planned, Disney scaled way back and did a small event at a Spanish castle that inspired the original movie. At said event, Zegler performed a few songs, while Gal Gadot was notably absent, and it was also closed to red carpet press, with Disney reporting that they, quote, wanted a more celebratory, family-friendly afternoon event to match the tone and target audience for the film. In other words, they didn't want any interviewers stirring the pot. Allegedly, a small LA premiere is still scheduled, but I honestly think that at this point, Disney just wants it to be over. We'll have to see how Snow White performs once it's released, but I wouldn't be surprised if it crashes and burns. I just hope that Disney doesn't take away the wrong thing from its failure. Inclusivity is not the problem. It's all of these live-action remakes. What are your thoughts on the Snow White movie? Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!